Did you know that 9 out of 10 businesses implement AI in the worst way possible, wasting thousands of dollars and destroying employee morale? In this video, I'm going to show you exactly why this happens and how you can avoid this critical mistake. Hi, I'm Kofi, and I've helped businesses generate over $200 million in revenue, and I've tested more than 100 AI tools. I recently had a revealing discussion about the real reason most AI implementations fail, and it's not what you think. You'll learn the shocking disconnect between business owners who think AI is a good idea and employees who sabotage their plans, how your customer service reps and salespeople can make or break your brand reputation if they disagree with using AI, and also the simple approach that takes your staff from AI resistors into AI champions. Watch until the end because I'll also reveal how to avoid becoming another AI failure statistic by figuring out where you are in your AI journey and how to best use AI for your specific business.
We're honored to have Kofi Anand. And Kofi Anand, he's a brand strategist, culture futurist, and founder of Brand Sensei. He's worked for some major companies, enterprises, Mercedes-Benz, Puma. He is definitely the specialist and an expert in this area. And we'd like to share some information with you all. Everybody better listen up. This guy knows what he's doing. Coffee?
Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Jose. Glad to join the team again and contribute to the conversation and help brands move forward. As we're talking about AI readiness, the area that I usually play when I work with different brands and different companies is more in the marketing, sales, customer experience context. So this particular focus on frontline employees is really key because at the end of the day, the people on the front line of a business, whether they be call center people or people who work in the retail stores, they exhibit what that brand is and what that product is. So neglecting them and not pulling them into the conversation, not pulling them into the fold is definitely a big misstep for a lot of organizations. Unfortunately, I do hear a lot, we all hear that a lot, right? Where a lot of the conversation around AI adoption in organizations is really more on the executive level, automation, efficiencies, those kinds of things. And as usual, as regular people, we know that that scares us. There was a stat that came up recently that I read where it says 45% of employees don't think their companies have rolled out AI properly. Contrast that to 75% of C-suites who think that they have. So if you look at that dynamic, you can see that's a huge disconnect between what the C-suite wants to do with the organization as far as making it efficient and accessible and all those kinds of things, and what the role that the employees and the frontline people are playing in that. And as much as directives can come from the C-suite, a lot of that starts coming through when you're talking about something like a call center employee, right? How their comfort with understanding the brand, understanding the company, understanding the nuances, especially if it's a technology, understanding what the technology does and doesn't, their comfort with the product and their comfort with delivering that on behalf of the company really is of utmost importance. And I think that there's a lot of work that still needs to be done to bring those folks along and let them even know exactly what the whole AI adoption focus is for. What is their incentive? What's in it for them? How does that actually make their job and their lives better? Mm-hmm.
What kind of role is there for customer feedback in shaping a company's adoption strategy? There can be that disconnect between the people on the 30th floor and the people on the ground who are actually implementing those policies.
This is a part that a lot of executives miss because, let's be real, a lot of executives don't spend too much time on the front lines, right? They're busy doing important work, but at the same time, they're still a little bit more disconnected from what's happening day to day. So it's, as we're trying to roll out things like AI and automation, especially, it's even more important for C-suite executives both to get feedback from and take a pulse of the employees. But at the end of the day, the customers are really the people who really keep the company going. So as you're building out your AI adoption, hopefully it's a program and not a directive. As you're building out your AI adoption program, there's a huge need to have a context around the employees, how you're enabling them, how you're empowering them, but then also the customers themselves, right? So how are you over time keeping a pulse on the feedback from the two? Again, I'll just use the example of a call center because it's the most clear example. But when customers come off of the line with a call center employee that's helping them troubleshoot a problem, when they go to that one question, can you wait around for a one question survey? What are the customers saying in that survey after they've interacted with your employee? Now, the customer is not explicitly going to say that, oh, this was AI or something like that, but there are some keywords and some sentiment that you could pull from those surveys that helps you understand whether maybe the customer service person was flustered in finding information, and that might be a result of they couldn't even understand how the AI was working with them. Or even if you've gone so far as to automate the whole customer dialogue, looking at that customer feedback and reading meticulously, going through that and processing that can give you a sense of how well it's reflecting on your customers and whether they'd want to call back into and get in contact with the organization. So customer feedback is the paramount metric as far as I'm concerned. And then everything else works back from there. And that's why I think rolling out AI adoption programs should be systematic and not a blanket, let's do AI and get and automate everything. Same thing goes for sales too, because a lot of time I remember years ago when iPads and tablets first became a thing. Jose, you might even remember this if you said you were in the sales days. Traditional salespeople would go from client to client with a briefcase full of brochures and papers, and they got used to that, right? This is when I ask this question, I pull out this thing. So that's that kind of cadence, and that for a salesperson, that kind of comfort in knowing how to guide the conversation. I remember years ago when tablets first came out, and iPads specifically, and they were a mandate because they did all the things that on the corporate side they wanted to do. There was transparency, there was efficiency. You didn't have to print as much paper. You could read the data and see if the salesperson was actually making the connection with the customer. All these things, so it all made sense on paper. But for a very long time, the usability of when given those iPads, it was less than 15% of salespeople were even using that. You would give them, they would agree, they would nod, this is great. And if you did a ride along with the salespeople, you'll see that they still went in their briefcase or and pulled out the paper. So I think where we are now is a clear example of the similar thing that's happening, where you have to understand the context to which your frontline salespeople are having their conversation and their interactions, and then incorporate them in the decision making about how to roll that out. And I know when we did it, in some instances, we went from, I know for one project, we went from about 10% utilization for the iPads, for instance, to about 35% in less than a quarter, right? And that, again, that was just based on them feeling that they had a role in their rollout, but then also they actually understood how to use it and customize it for their use at the front lines. So I think it's another example of how you could make these things work really easily by bringing the front lines in earlier. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, this all makes sense, but how do I know if my business is making these same critical mistakes? Well, I've got something to help. I've created a free tool that will help you discover exactly where your business stands with AI and whether you're part of the 75% getting it wrong or the 25% doing it right. In just 5 minutes, it analyzes your current approach and gives you an actionable roadmap of exactly where you should be focused. Comment activate below and I'll send you the link. But here's the thing, avoiding these mistakes is just the beginning. Once you've got your foundation solid, you have to make sure you're using the right AI tools for your marketing, sales, and customer retention. So make sure you watch this next video where I'll reveal the 3 most underrated AI marketing tools you should be using right now. Trust me, the first one is going to completely change what you know about your customers.